I'm Graham Hales, CEO of Interbrand in London.
Why do brands matter, especially today?
Well, brands should generate value for a company. In essence, if we think about a brand in its simplest way, people can use ideas about it. It's what people say about you when you're not in a room. So it should be as important to an organisation as its reputation. It should help bring people to an organisation in terms of the talent that they want to recruit in the future. It should create loyalty with their customers. It should drive competitive advantage for them. So a brand is fundamentally important.
Can you give me some example of major brands and why they've succeeded, what we can learn from them?
Sure. At Interbrand, we study the top 100 global brands by value every year. So we can see that all of those major brands have got a great story behind them, be it from Coca-Cola operating effectively across most of the world's major markets with a degree of consistency and expressing their idea around the world, through to McDonald's actually offering a consistent offer with variations through their menu, brands that have moved with the time like McDonald's, through to great car brands. Every brand has got a great story to tell. So if we look at great brands, you could look at brands like Apple, that was one of the fastest growing brands on our league table again this year. If you kind of take any brand fan, Apple's the brand which they'll first want to talk about. Retailers thought they knew everything about retail. Then Apple moved into creating retail spaces and suddenly redeclared the rules of retail, if you like. They get the highest sales per square foot out of any retailer, and yet people still say, well, is Apple a retailer or an electronics company? So you can see at that point you've got a brand which is straddling between different markets and providing new lessons and new ways of doing business. Think of a brand like Amazon, where they fundamentally changed the way that we retail some years ago. They set off with this great idea of we want to have 1 million books that are available online. There wasn't even 1 million books that they could find easily, but they knew that was a headline figure. Now, these days, they've fundamentally changed the way that we shop, and if we think about any convenient form of shopping, we're straight away going out and searching it, and our price comparisons come through on Amazon, single-click shopping, new inventions like that have just happened over the last decade, but are very, very different to the way that we were before.
Why, despite all this, do we fail to take brands seriously enough?
Brands are still sometimes a difficult subject for businesses to master. You still find some people think about brands simply as being a logo, so are failing to appreciate the full spectrum and dimensions that a brand can have and how it can affect a business. In the UK particularly, we have great strengths on left-brain businesses, analytical businesses, our professional services areas versus our creative industries. And it sometimes feels that there's a gap that sits in the middle of those between businesses which truly understand the commerciality, the nuts and bolts, and the creativity that goes alongside it to create great brands. And great brands require both of those aspects to be taken into account. You've got to understand the commercial effect of the brand, so things like brand valuation become critical to us to understand what the brand is delivering to the business as an asset, and also the creative ways that brands can come to life. So, it's a demanding and challenging world. It sometimes feels difficult for businesses to fully embrace it because, to a degree, once your brand is really alive and strong inside a business, it has a role to play within the leadership of the business. It helps you understand what you should do to maintain being on brand and what you shouldn't do, which risks the inconsistency that can sometimes fragment a brand. So they're challenging things, but they offer real business advantages and competitive asset value.
What are some of the key ways in which organisations can meet the challenges of brand positioning and managing brands?
Well, firstly, they've got to understand exactly what it is that the market opportunities for their brand are. So what do consumers really want? What's their market asking them for? And what's the organisation's overall vision? What does it want to achieve as a business? And what's it really good at? And there's sort of an intersection point between what your market wants you to be and what you want to be as an organisation. Hopefully those two things marry there, and that's a really fertile area for where a brand positioning should come from. You sometimes find as organisations go through that sort of process, they end up in a rush to communicate what it is that they're trying to do. And we always advise organisations, don't say things before you're really living it inside the organisation and delivering it, because you can create a mismatch between the expectations that you're delivering to a marketplace and what it is you're fundamentally delivering. And that's one of the traps that people can get into.
What do you think the focus will need to be on in the future in order to maximise the value of brands?
Well, brands have been through a very interesting few years. They need to move as quickly as consumer markets change. And one of the things we can see over the last few years is the recession has had an incredible effect on how quickly consumer markets have changed. In fact, if you like, we've consumers have been trained in consumerism over the last decade, so demand levels are really high. What consumers are desiring is really high, but the money they've got in their pockets isn't actually what it used to be. So businesses have got a fundamental challenge about how they deal with this sense of demand and at the same point this sense of value. Other things which are taking place in the market about digital. So how does a brand master its digital arenas? When we think about that in terms of communication, that's just one aspect of it. Digital has given birth to the age of information, so transparency is incredibly important for brands to understand. Then we get into the role of corporate citizenship, and what people once saw as being CSR and fundamentally brands doing good things becomes pivotal to a brand's success in the future. So how the brand demonstrates itself to be a good citizen within the markets of tomorrow. So there's an awful lot of things taking place within branding at the moment that make it difficult for brands to navigate their future landscape. But we do know that every market is rich with opportunities because every market is changing.